Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this lunch hour. My name is Ine Beller, and I serve as the supervisor for the Akis Library Science team. Joining me today for this session will be two of our digital archivists, Nicole Feldman and Allison Olson. Helping us to manage the chat is also our metadata librarian, Julie Paskis. So we're going to get started today on our session on preparing for the NIH 2026 submissions, NIH data management and sharing updates, along with CHOP Dataverse overview. Now, the NIH data management and sharing policy became effective on January 25th, 2023 and remains in force. It applies to all NIH-funded research that generates scientific data and requires investigators to plan, budget, and implement data management and sharing appropriately. While there has not been a new formal overhaul or replacement of the NIH DMS policy itself, NIH has clarified implementation practices and maintains the core requirements. What is required under the existing DMS policy includes a data management and sharing plan, which is required. A DMSP plan is required at submission and sets expectations for the entire project. The plan is reviewed and enforced. This is not a check the box document. The approved plan must be followed. Data sharing is expected for scientific data. NIH does not expect sharing of everything, but it does expect sharing of data that supports the research outcomes. Data must be shared as soon as possible. NIH expects timely sharing aligned with the research lifecycle and not indefinite delays. An appropriate repository must be identified. Naming a repository demonstrates feasibility and preparedness. Metadata and documentation are required. Shared data must be understandable, reusable, and not just deposited. Reasonable cost may be budgeted. NIH expects data sharing to be planned and resourced appropriately. Human subjects protection still apply. Data sharing does not override participant protections. The current NIH DMS policy requires a clear, feasible plan for managing and sharing scientific data. Reviewed at submission, is enforced after award, and aligned with responsible research practices. So now we'll move on to some of the implementation updates and guidance from 2024 to 2025. NIH issued several guidance and process updates relating to the DMS policy. These are not changes to the policy text itself, but affect how researchers comply. Prior approval for planned revisions. NIH introduced a process to request prior approval for changes to an approved DMS plan, for example, changing repositories or timelines. And that can be, And also reporting in progress reports. Institutions and PIs must report DMS activities in the that's the Research Performance Progress Reports. Genomic data sharing coordination. NIH implemented updates to better align the NIH genomic data sharing policy considerations within the broader DMS policy framework, reducing duplicate reporting. Security and controlled access data guidance. NIH and related agencies have updated security measures for controlled access data sets, improving protections for sensitive human genomic and related data. This reflects broader data stewardship concerns, though it is not a rewrite of the DMS policy itself. So what has not changed recently? The NIH has not repealed or replaced the DMS policy. It remains active and is required for relevant NIH proposals, as I stated earlier. Recent changes to the NIH manuscript public access policy went into effect July 1, 2025. It does not modify the data sharing requirements under the DMS policy itself, but it affects publication access. Besides those, there are no new major legislative or regulatory updates to the DMS policy. So now the NIH requires all applicable applications to include a data management and sharing plan limited to 2 pages. This plan is reviewed as part of the application and sets expectations for how data will be managed, shared throughout the project. Reviewers are looking for clarity and feasibility, not excessive technical details. NIH allows investigators to budget for reasonable and allowable costs related to data management and sharing. This includes activities such as data curation, documentation, metadata preparation, and repository-related costs when appropriate. Including this cost signals that data sharing has been thoughtfully planned and resourced rather than treated as an afterthought. NIH expects data to be shared as soon as it is feasible to do so. This does not mean sharing data prematurely, but it does mean planning for sharing to align with the research life cycle. Reviewers want to see that data sharing has been integrated into the project timeline. At a minimum, NIH requires data to be shared no later than the time of publication or the end of the award period, whichever comes first. Stating this clearly in the DMSP plan reassures reviewers that the project meets baseline NIH expectations and avoids ambiguity around timing. Taking all this together, these core requirements emphasize planning, transparency, and feasibility. The goal is not to just comply with the policy, but is to demonstrate that data sharing is a manageable and well-supported part of the research process. So here are some of the updates in more detail here. The core NIH data management and sharing DMS policy hasn't been replaced or overhauled since it took effect on January 25th, 2023. Most updates since then are implementation and reporting mechanics, which I've touched on a little bit earlier. This involves how NIH wants you to report and request changes. Now, the RPPR now requires structured DMSP reporting, and that went into effect October 1, 2024. NIH added new RPPR questions requiring awardees to report by data type, whether data has been generated, shared, the repository used, and any identifiers such as DOI. This applies to the RPPRs that are submitted on or after October 1, 2024. Now, in the NIH RPPR instruction guide, which went out May 2025, the DMS reporting appears under section C.5C. Yes, C.5C. That's under the data management and sharing section, and asks per data type, data generated, data shared, status if not shared, and the repository and the DOI identifier, plus whether you are requesting significant prospective changes to the DMS plan. New process for revising an approved DMS plan went into effect October 1, 2024. NIH updated where you submit your DMS plan revision request, and that is in the ERA Commons. So pre-award, they want you to submit a revised, if you're looking to submit a revised DMS plan, you should do so via the JIT DMSP revision section and not the section for other file. Post-award, they want you to use the prior approval module. They want you using the prior approval module and or the RPPR module as applicable. Requests must be submitted by the signing official. And NIH emphasizes that email is not an acceptable format for making these requests. The NIH also signaled in December 2025 upcoming changes around controlled access and genomic data policy landscape, which is the RFI. NIH issued an RFI December 17, 2025 about a draft NIH controlled access data policy and proposed revisions to the genomic data sharing policy to reduce duplication with DMS, with the data management and sharing. Now, notably, NIH proposes narrowing the GDS scope to human genomic data, with DMS continuing to cover scientific data broadly. Please note that this draft is ambiguous as it is right now and is still work in progress. NIH reorganized and updated DMS guidance pages on October 5th, 2025. NIH moved and refreshed the DMS resources on the grants.nih.gov. For example, that's where you find selecting a data repository, writing a DMS plan, and budgeting. If you had old NIH.gov bookmarks, NIH explicitly says to update them. So what do we do differently? For new submissions and competing renewals, they want you to keep the DMS plan content aligned to the standard NIH elements. Make sure your budget justification supports DMS cost. NIH allows requesting this cost. Peer reviewers may comment on reasonableness, but it won't affect the score. Post-award, where most people may get tripped up. So the RPPRs are due on or after October 1, 2024. Be ready to report per data, as I said earlier, your data type, repository, your DOI identifier, etc. If you need if you need to change your repository timeline or scientific direction in your DMS plan, they want you to route that through the formal ERA modules and along with your signing official and not an email. So why this matters in 2026? As we move into 2026, it is important to understand that the NIH is no longer asking whether a data management plan exists. They are evaluating how well thought out and realistic the plan is. In earlier years, simply stating that data will be shared was often sufficient, but today reviewers are looking for specifics. What data will be produced, where it would live, how it will be documented, and when it will be shared. Data management and sharing plan is not part of the National Institutes of Health, it's not part of how the National Institutes of Health assesses scientific rigor and feasibility. A vague generic plan can raise questions about whether a project is truly ready to be carried out. In other words, the DMS plan has shifted from a compliance checkbox to a signal of research maturity. A strong plan reassures reviewers that the team understands its data, has appropriate infrastructure, and can follow through on what it's proposing. This is why we're spending time here today, not to add burden, but to help you position your science as credible, well-supported, and ready for funding. So review expectations. Now we can take a close look at what NIH reviewers are actually expecting to see in a strong DMS plan, where teams may often run into trouble as well. When NIH reviewers read a data management and sharing plan, they are asking very practical questions. Is this plan realistic for the science being proposed? Reviewers are not looking for lengthy narratives. They are looking for clarity, specificity, and feasibility. Reviewers want to see that you've clearly identified where your data will be shared, naming a specific repository. Naming a specific repository demonstrates feasibility and preparedness. It also assures the reviewer that data sharing isn't hypothetical. It is planned. Using a trusted institutional or domain-appropriate repository also signals credibility and reduces uncertainty during review. Okay, and then reviewers also expect clarity about what data will be shared. This includes identifying the types of data, such as quantitative data sets, qualitative data, or supporting documentation, and the formats in which they will be provided. Clear descriptions help reviewers assess whether proposed data sharing approach is realistic and appropriate for the study. Metadata is what makes shared data understandable and reusable. Reviewers look for an indication that data sets will be accompanied by documentation such as data dictionaries or code books, and that recognized metadata standards will be used where appropriate. This signals that shared data will be meaningful to others, not just archived. Furthermore, reviewers pay close attention to the data sharing timeline. NIH expects data to be shared as soon as possible, no later than the publication or the end of the award period. A realistic timeline, one that aligns with the study milestones, shows reviewers that data sharing has been thoughtfully integrated into the research workflow rather than deferred indefinitely. Here are some common DMSP pitfalls. For example, using language like data will be shared upon request, not naming a repository, no metadata standards listed, data sharing postponed indefinitely, all confusion between lab storage versus long-term preservation. NIH expects intentional infrastructures and not just placeholders. Taken together, these elements named repositories, clear data descriptions, metadata planning, realistic timelines, help reviewers see that data sharing is feasible, responsible, and a well thought out process, ultimately, which provides enables you to your DMSP to be strengthened and to be strengthened. Sorry about that. Okay. So now we can move on. And then timeline. Pre-submission planning. Data sharing starts before the proposal is submitted. During pre-submission planning, the focus is on identifying the types of data the study will generate, selecting an appropriate repository, and outlining a realistic approach in the data management and sharing plan. Planning early allows teams to avoid last-minute revisions and ensures that the proposal reflects a feasible and well thought out strategy. So at this time, let's see, I'll go back here. Great. Also, I'm sorry about that. So post-award preparation, once an award is made, the emphasis shifts from preparation. This includes organizing files, confirming documentation such as data dictionary or code books, and addressing any de-identification or access controls needed for human subject data. This stage ensures that data are ready to be shared when the time comes, rather than rushing at the end of the project. So publish at publication or end of award. The final stage is sharing the data at publication or at the latest by the end of the award period. At this point, data sets are deposited in the selected repository, assigned persistent identifiers, and made available in accordance with funder and journal requirements. When data sharing has been planned and prepared for earlier, this step is straightforward and very timely. Thinking about data sharing as a timeline, not a single task, helps integrate it naturally into the research workflow and reduces stress for study teams. Next, Alison Olsen, one of our digital archivists, will give an overview and details of CHOP Dataverse, which is CHOP's NIH aligned institutional repository for research data. Alison?
Yeah, thank you, Anae. Yeah, so as Anae mentioned, Dataverse, and what I'm going to go through is also kind of some of our support services to help you meet the requirements for your NIH data management and sharing plans and grant requirements. So Dataverse is an open access repository for sharing, preserving, and accessing research data across disciplines. The repository and software is managed as a collaboration between Harvard Libraries, Harvard University IT, and the Institute of Qualitative and Social Science. The CHOP Dataverse is a dedicated organizational unit within the larger Dataverse platform, designed specifically for CHOP researchers to share data. This ensures that all CHOP-related datasets are easily discoverable as a cohesive collection, highlighting the research contributions of the institution while benefiting from the visibility and interoperability of the larger Dataverse network. Dataverse is part of the NIH's Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, and it is identified by the NIH and also leading publishers like Public Library of Science, Nature, and Elsevier as a recommended repository for sharing research data. So I'm going to go over some of the key benefits of using this platform. Dataverse is a FAIR repository. FAIR stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable. FAIR are international standards for data sharing that highlight the importance of utilizing standardized metadata, persistent identifiers, and open file formats to facilitate the easy location, sharing, integration with other datasets, and reusability of data for future research endeavors. Sharing in a FAIR compliant way supports open science and aligns with commitments to research transparency. As mentioned before, Dataverse is recognized by many funders and journals as meeting the requirement for data availability. Data on Dataverse is easily discoverable. There's comprehensive tools for searching both data or data files and metadata. All content on there is indexed for web searches, boosting your visibility. The repository also has secure cloud storage for all the data on it with backups and persistent identifiers, which persistent identifiers are stable, long-lasting references that uniquely identify digital data objects over time and part of regular archiving and preservation requirements and standards. Each collection will have a digital object identifier. You might see this when you're making an NIH DMSP plan or getting funder requirements for sharing your data that they want a DOI or digital object identifier. And it's a unique permanent link. And this is automatically created when you create a new collection and add data. They also, each collection page will automatically create standardized citations so that anyone who uses your data knows how to cite it. Dataverse has a clean and user-friendly interface with the capability to customize metadata and search terms, as well as the ability to create custom user agreements, and so that it's clear what the reuse requirements are for the data when you share it. Uploading data for a new collection is very simple. There's drag and drop options to upload. There's also an open API if you have a really large collection or a lot of files. And then on the download side, for users, you can just kind of like click and do a direct download, which will be shown when we do a demo, or there's also an API again if there's really large or a lot of files. And then there's many integrations and features. There's like regular development of the site, new features being added. Some of the ones that might be of interest are you can do linking with research articles on some research collections, research article collections, integrations with GitHub, or integrations with other repositories. And so you can kind of share everything related to your research collection on Dataverse for reuse. The repository is data agnostic, so you can share any file type that is appropriate for your research project. Though we recommend using open file types rather than proprietary file types. There are also specific features for data sets. So that's like tab files or CSV files that give previews for the tabular data. All data shared on Dataverse should be de-identified and should have proper consents for public sharing. So it's not the right collection for data that is identifiable. Following best practices for data reuse and reproducibility, you can also share reference information and analysis files along with the data, such as codebooks, data dictionaries, analysis scripts, and README files. When sharing your collection on Dataverse, us, the library science team, will work with you in determining what file types are best for sharing and what reference and analysis information should be shared with those files to ensure that the project is reusable and reproducible. So if you're interested in contributing, ideally all data shared on CHOP Dataverse will first be submitted to ARCIS, which is an archive for research data within the CHOP enterprise as a data contribution. We will share information about the data contribution process, like a link, if you want to see more information at the end of this presentation, and you can also reach out to anyone on the team on this presentation. As part of the submission, ARCIS will ensure the research data is stored securely. So we have secure cloud storage that is backed up and meets preservation standards. Yeah, and then once contributed, once we have that data saved, our metadata librarian will create standardized terms to describe the collection and make it searchable. The metadata will be added to CHOP's internal discovery platforms, ARCIS Cohort Discovery, and the Gene Data Catalog, making the data findable and requestable for use within ARCIS Labs, so within the CHOP enterprise. Finally, the library science team will publish that metadata and the research data on CHOP Dataverse, enabling public access to the data set, so outside of CHOP. The amount of data, the data types, and level of metadata shared on Dataverse can be more limited than what is preserved internally through the Arcus archives. The contributor can determine what is appropriate for public sharing, balancing visibility with any necessary restrictions for data privacy. And so the cost of using Dataverse for collections under 1 TB, so that's all the data files that you're going to share, there will be no costs associated with any of these services. We will handle archiving and public sharing, ensuring the preservation of the data, metadata creation, helping you with the organization and description of the files, and that'll help you with the compliance for publisher and grant requirements. If all the files you want to share exceed 1 TB, data storage costs, and this is only for the public sharing, there'll be no costs for like the Arcus services or Arcus data storage, will apply. In this case, Arcus staff will facilitate a connection between the research team and Harvard large data services. The research team or center will need to enter an individual contract with Harvard to cover these costs for sharing. So this testimonial is from Dr. Kate Henry and reflects the experience of a CHOP research PI who partnered with the Arcus Library Science team to meet funder and journal sharing requirements. Like many research teams, they faced increasing expectations about when, where, and how data would be shared. The library science team worked alongside the research team to translate those requirements into clear, achievable steps, reviewing the data management and sharing plan, advising on documentation, and advising on preparing the data set for deposit. Using CHOP Dataverse as a trusted institutional repository gave the PI confidence that their data would be shared responsibly, documented clearly, and accessible when requested by the journal or funder. Importantly, Arcus guidelines helped ensure alignment with the NIH's expectations while protecting participant privacy through appropriate data identification and access controls. The result will be a smoother publication process, fewer last-minute revisions, and a data sharing approach that felt integrated into the research workflow rather than tacked on at the end when you need to share to be able to publish your paper or finish a grant. So now Nicole, digital archivist with Arcus, will demo Dataverse, showing a CHOP collection shared on Dataverse, MRI analysis and neurocognitive assessment of children and young adults with chronic kidney disease, or for short, the NICS study. This study, whose PI was Susan Firth, is a cross-sectional study examining neurocognitive neuroimaging differences in children and young adults with chronic kidney disease compared to healthy controls. Shared data on Dataverse includes a de-identified data set, MRI files, pulse oximeter files, and related reference information.
Thanks, Allison and Ane. So I'm going to share my screen so I can give a demo of CHOP Dataverse. So here's our Dataverse instance. This is the URL that we have on all our resources about Dataverse. And so this is how it looks to anyone visiting the site from the web. You can see how we have our CHOP specific branding. Since we have our own sort of institutional page, we're able to customize all these links and the copy that's listed here, as well as the metadata that appears in the filters on the side. So I'm going to log in. And so you can see I'm able to log in directly through my CHOP institutional login. Anyone with a CHOP or Penn email is able to do the same. So I'm going to click in. And because I'm an admin for our page, I'm able to see a little bit of more content, but I'm going to filter to the publish filter so that we have the same view as any user coming from the web would have. So as Allison mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the NICS study today, but I just wanted to mention the other study that we have on Dataverse, which is the Wrong Blood and Tube machine learning project. And that was a great study contributed from Brandon Graham in the pathology department during our pilot program in the summer of 2024. So focusing on the NIC study, Allison mentioned this is a project that was actually previously contributed by Dr. Firth via our ARCIS data contribution process. And we connected with her because we wanted to highlight a foundational project for the Research Institute that merited broader sharing and to expand its reach. So I'm clicking in directly into that entry for the NIC study. You can see the citation is right up on top, along with some other citation standards. The metadata that appears here, we were able to customize this view. And then there's two ways that you can look at files in the collection. This table view is just sort of like a catalog view of every file in the collection with a basic description. There's also a tree view that shows the overall arrangement for the collection. And as Allison and Anae mentioned in their sections of the presentation, through your DMS plan, it's expected that you'll share both the data outputs from your research as long as any contextual information, which is why we wanted to highlight this view of the study. So for the collection, we have some reference information, like all the medications that were administered in the study in alphabetical order, as well as by classification, a configuration file for the functional MRIs that were included in the study, a data dictionary from the REDCap project, and an authoritative README that we wrote along with the study team that provides just a general narrative description of the study, which is essential for reuse. And this was authored according to the standards of Cornell's Writing REMEAD for research data. Then in the research data section, we have outputs from the REDCap project, along with those functional MRI images and the pulse oximeter files, which have all been completely de-identified. So this metadata tab has a more complete metadata view. So this is the DOI that we've mentioned a few times that is automatically minted when you deposit in Dataverse. The alternative URL that we have here, since this project was also published in ARCIS, this links directly to the gene catalog entry. So anyone in CHOP would also be able to view that more comprehensive catalog record. Any contributors to the study, it links out to both their ORC ID and their ROR entries, which is the Research Organization Registry, sort of emphasizing the web indexing power of Dataverse. We have a more comprehensive description, applied mesh subject headings, inclusion-exclusion criteria. And this area also walks through some of the software and data sources were used and a basic description of the study. The terms listed here, that's the terms of use that we customized in collaboration with our privacy department that you're shown to several times, also includes the citation requirements. And I'm just going to go back to file and show how you might download one. And then you'll see if you go through the download screens, you're also shown the file and dataset citation and prompted to accept the terms of use here as well. Because I'm already logged in, it knows how to collect my name and institutional email information. But if someone was browsing from the web, when they were to agree to these terms of use, they would be prompted to enter that so that we make sure any sort of authorized user is providing the right information and we can have better tracking. And you can see there's file metrics showing the number of times this file's been downloaded there. So I'm just going to switch screens so I can go back to the slides. So one other service that I wanted to highlight today is our draft dataset feature. So you may have noticed when I logged in as an admin, I had the ability to filter down to both draft and published items. So this is a feature we offer. We'll create like a private URL with all the standardized metadata and data files uploaded for you to share with a collaborator or publisher, so that you have all those materials ready while you're still in the publication process. And a great thing about this is that you can sort of prep your data set for public sharing, and then decide at the end whether you want to continue with publishing your collection on Dataverse, or whether you want to remove it and maybe make it more available later in your publication timeline. So I'm just going to kind of provide a summary of all our service offerings that Anae and Allison have touched upon today. So DMS plan reviews, we're happy to review plans at any phase of the grant application. Ideally, when you're still in your drafting pre-award phase. We're also happy to help you review and incorporate any feedback once you're a little further along in the process. We help with repository selection for specific data types or funder disciplines. Some agencies and domains require deposit into a designated specialty repository, and we're happy to help you find that option. And if you are required to deposit in a specialist repository, you can still deposit your collection into the Dataverse as well. The metadata that we generate through this process can easily be ingested into other repositories and largely follows widely used standards and ontologies. We can also help you with ontology selections, things like how to structure a data dictionary or data collection processing template. And we also use DMP tool, which is a service provided by the University of California that, like CHOP Dataverse, only requires institutional credentials to use. It's a really great drag and drop wizard for creating DMS plans. And our group continues to build out a library of available templates based on funding source and data types as we work with more groups. So like we said, please reach out. We're happy to connect with anyone. So as our call to action, we just wanted to remind people to engage our team early as you're working on your 2026 NIH submissions. And we have some resources listed here that we'll share with everyone on the call as well. So we wanted to pause and see if there's any questions. If there's no questions for now, then as a wrap up, we just want to mention with the timeline for 2026 grant submissions, we encourage you to reach out to us this month for help with strengthening your DMS language, selecting repositories, and aligning with current NIH expectations. In February, while plans are reviewed, connect with us about incorporating any feedback or refining any ambiguities. And just a reminder that we can help with plan review, submitting to Dataverse, any sort of data strategies or metadata and documentation planning.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole and Allison. So that we don't have any questions, that will wrap up our sessions. We're looking to have these done quarterly, I believe. So we're going to be planning another session further down in the year. So we'll also send out that information. We'll provide this recording and as well as the the PowerPoint, the slides to those in attendance, and so that they can share with their team members that weren't able to make the session today. Feel free to reach out to us. We have consultation hours available that you can reach us and schedule so we can meet with your team and discuss your DMSP plans with you and offer some suggestions, provide boiler templates, and also review once if you have it already written out. So we hope that this session provided you with information to help you get started or to notify you of that we are here. We have the resources and the services to help you strengthen your DMSP and have submit great DMSPs. Our whole goal here today. So if we don't have any questions, we're happy to give you 10, 15 minutes back of your time, and just want to thank you very much for tuning in for joining us today for this session. Any questions? If not, we can wrap things up. No questions? All right. Well, thank you everyone for spending your lunch hour with us, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.